Any more? All right, Jason,
All
I have
right, there we
made you the
go.
host.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. And I'm going to jump right into it when we hit 2:30 because the
Absolutely.
last time I did this presentation, it was a little over an hour and I have to get it down to 50 minutes now.
Yeah, I hate when you have to cut stuff out or speak really, really
Yeah,
fast.
I cut a little bit, but I'm going to kind of be blazing through it as much
That's
as I
fine. Just so folks know, again, please keep your cameras off, your microphones off. Put your questions in the chat. We'll go through those towards the end, or unless Jason wants to kind of stop in the middle. And for those of you who do not have your registration number in front of your name, you will not be able to be entered for any of the raffle prizes. So if you want to be entered in the raffle, you've got to put your number. You've got about a few minutes to go ahead and do that. Thank you very much. We'll turn it over to Jason Rasmussen. Jason, take it away.
Perfect. Carl, are you recording?
This is being recorded.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure it's recording. I didn't
Yep.
see
It's
it's
live
on
on,
my side.
it's actually
Oh, here we
being
go.
recorded
Record
to
to this
YouTube.
computer there, just in case as a backup.
Yep, just in case as a backup. It's your
Absolutely. Okay, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Rasmussen, and I am going to be talking about transmitting your audio over FM or any other kind of audio questions as well. I've been doing this since 2017, and um, you know, but for computers and audio, I mean, I've been an aficionado for a very long time, and went to college for a lot of this stuff for audio video as well, so definitely studied this stuff. But I always like to pay it forward as well, because I mean, when I was starting out with this, I was helped by a lot of people, so I want to make sure I pay it forward and help other people too. And then there's my website if you wanted to check out my display. So sound is 50 the sound and music are 50% of the entertainment in a movie, said by George Lucas. I mean, sound is extremely important. Your display looks good, but does it sound good? Sound is extremely important to our displays. Do you have poor audio or distortion or static or even flat undynamic sound? Quality audio is a lot more than just picking a FM transmitter and just plugging it in. And differences in visuals are very easy to see, but with audio, you really need to hear the difference. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to have good audio. Audio questions always come up before the lights go on. So if you're in this meeting now, that's a good question, because too many people, they turn on the display. Oh my gosh, my display's running, but it sounds horrible. So good thing you're doing this now. So a couple disclaimers here. The Zoom presentation as well as YouTube will both add their own audio compression, degrading the audio comparisons. So I'm primarily going to be using visual displays in this. And if you want to look at the original audio examples, I have them provided here. And this is not an in-depth audio discussion, but it's enough knowledge for you to make informed audio decisions, correct, and avoid issues. And any products I recommend, I receive no royalties at all, so I don't see a dime from any of this. So just so you know. Now, do you need a quick fix? You may be watching this later in the year, and you just need to get your display up. I made a very quick little video on kind of how to just very, very quickly optimize your display. And this works no matter if you're using FPP, Xschedule, Pi, doesn't matter. But I recommend you watch the entire presentation so you can get the most out of your audio. And the last time I did this presentation, I got a lot of good compliments. And here's one of them. I just finished your X Essentials video on optimizing display audio, and I simply wanted to reach out to you and say thank you. I fought with numerous small audio issues over the past couple of years, noise, varying audio levels, etc. And your video helped me improve my audio quality by 1,000%. And that's from Mike Madole. So yeah, it's definitely helped a lot of people in this. So let's go over some audio terminology. Decibels. Audio is measured in decibels. And decibels is a ratio, it's not a linear scale, and it compares the value of one number to another. We measure audio in negative numbers and work our way up to 0. And generally, every 3 dB is a doubling in the volume. 0 is the loudest the audio can be without distortion, and anything more than this, and you will clip the audio. We'll explain what clipping is in a little bit. Dynamic range. This is the contrast between the loud and the soft. So soft Songs are often using dynamic range to be very dramatic. So they'll have a quiet part and then they'll boom lead up to a louder part. And you want to make sure you have that dynamic range. It makes it really punchy and just kind of gives life to the song. If levels are not set correctly, you can clip in these louder parts. So what is clipping? Audio cannot go past 0 dB or you will get distortion from the clipping. This essentially cuts off the audio. And notice in the lower left-hand screen, this is clipped. So if you get, this is an Audacity. So if you see it hitting up and you're getting kind of red like that, that means you're clipping. Um, Quieter parts may not clip the song, but louder parts can. And having the audio in the red is okay, so long as it doesn't clip. So on the right-hand picture, you can see the audio is very close to there, but notice we're not getting clipping. So we're good there. So let's look at clipping a little bit closer. This distorts the audio and can never be corrected if files are saved this way. If the audio was clipped and saved this way, even reducing the volume, you're not going to recover that clipped audio. It's gone forever. And clipping can also occur with bad audio and bad FM settings. So clipping can not only occur in the song, but it can occur in other places as well. So here's an example. And in this, you're going to hear the audio kind of crackle when it clips to the red. Hopefully I did my sharing audio. We'll see if this works here. So just listen for the clipping when it gets to the big parts. Notice the clipping line right there on the right. Yeah, I don't know if Zoom heard it, but you do hear like a little bit of crackling when it hits that part up there. All right, let's go to the next slide. Make sure I got it. Okay. All right, signal to noise ratio. This is the ratio between the signal, which is good, and the noise or interference, which is bad. And this is abbreviated SNR. It's measured in decibels, and the higher the signal to noise ratio, the better. And noise can come from many places. It could be in the original audio recording. It could come from a poor quality sound card. It can come from bad settings. It can also come from electrical interference. We want the signal, we do not want the noise. And any noise that we have is only going to be amplified down the line. Like they say, garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure we don't have any of the least amount of garbage as possible. All right, normalizing. So what normalizing is this is amplifying the entire audio file equally, so the loudest part hits 0 dB. This will maximize the signal without altering the dynamic range. And even professionally recorded audio may not be normalized and can be too quiet when played with other songs that you have. So here's an example at the bottom. This is a song that I use in my sequence called "The House" by John Williams. It's from Home Alone, and in the top, that's the original, and it was not normalized. So it is pretty quiet. And when I play this against one of my other songs, just like that, it's going to be way too quiet. And then the other one comes in and it's way too loud. So what I did is I normalized it, and it makes it a lot palatable along with the other songs there. It also brings up my volume there. So you can normalize with an Audacity or with a program called MP3 Gain. If you're using Audacity, you will need to resave your file, and this will recompress it. I will explain about that in just a little bit. MP3 Gain will normalize the audio without recompressing. This is the preferred method. All right, so compression. This is adjusting the dynamic range of audio to a more unified volume. This is not to be confused with audiophile compressing, which I'll talk about in just a second. And most radio stations will use compression. This helps hide any hiss inherent in the FM radio. It also makes the volume more uniform. The dynamic range is altered, so the softer parts are going to be louder and the louder parts are going to be softer. Now, I personally don't like doing this as it alters the author's original intent, and quieter parts of the song kind of lose their impact. But if you're working with many files of various volumes, using dynamic compression will help unify all your volume levels to a more common value. And if you're running your show from a PC or Mac, you can actually do this live, and I'll talk about this later. But you can see there's the original song, and you can see where the compression is applied. It kind of unifies the volume there. All right, equalizer. This is used primarily to compensate for inadequacies in the final output or emphasize certain frequencies. I recommend that you use it sparingly or not at all. If you're broadcasting FM to cars, I recommend leaving it off or flat. Now, if you are using your setup for like with an external speaker setup, adjust where you can control the final speakers, then go ahead and adjust the final EQ to your liking, but make sure you do this only after you optimize your levels. And we'll talk about optimizing the audio levels later, which is key. All right, compressing audio. This is like your MP3, your AAC, your M4A. These are lossy audio formats. Now, a lot of people are, oh, I want to get rid of away from MP3. Don't. MP3 is still an excellent format. Don't be afraid to use it. And a properly encoded MP3 file will sound indistinguishable from the original. And if you buy your songs from Amazon, they compress their MP3s amazingly. They sound fantastic. AAC files, fine to use those as well. They achieve the same quality as MP3 does. They just typically do it at a slightly lower bit rate. What is the bit rate then? This is the amount of data that you give to an audio file. The higher the bit rate, the better, but there are points of diminishing returns. 128K, that's the lowest rate that you would ever want to go for decent sounding audio. You get into 192, it's really hard to tell the difference from the original. And then 320, that's the maximum possible bit rate you can have. Now, if you're using Audacity or any other kind of audio program, if you ever need to resave your audio file in a lossy format, you will permanently lose quality. And saving in a higher bit rate than the original or a different format will not improve the original. So if you have a 128K and you go to resave in 320, it's not going to help you any. It's still going to sound like a 128. And because you're recompressing it, it'll actually sound a little bit worse. If you do have to resave, a higher bit rate will cause less loss, but your files will be bigger. And like I stated, 128, it's saved at 320, it's still going to sound like 128. If you need to resave, here's a good setting in Audacity. This is the preset Extreme VBR, variable bitrate joint stereo. That's basically going to sound indistinguishable from the original. Little side note, if you're using LOR, some LOR users have had problems, I guess, playing back VBR files. So if that's the case, make sure you use CBR, constant bitrate of 192 or higher. And just a quick note, VBR and CBR are both part of the MP3 spec. So if a device can't play back VBR, they're not complying with the spec, but most people won't have to worry about that. All right, DAC, digital audio converter and audio quality. This is the chip that converts digital signals to analog signals, what we hear. And not all DACs are created equal. Higher quality DACs will create better sound. So you can see in the black, that's basically the digital sound. And then that DAC has to turn that into an analog sound that what we can hear. Now, you want to have the strongest output levels without clipping. So this all comes into audio quality. You want to reject noise instead of trying to remove it later. It's better to prevent noise in the first place than to try and compensate it for it later. And not all sound cards and FM transmitters are created equal. So let's talk sound cards. Here are the most common sound cards you're going to see in this hobby. You're going to see the Raspberry Pi 2, 3, and 4. They all use the same audio chip. Doesn't matter. You also have your generic, insert name brand here, generic audio adapters. I've seen those white ones. I've seen those black ones. They're all basically generic. Then you have your onboard computer, laptop audio. And then you have your Sound Blaster, which you can get as like a USB external. You can also get internal ones for your computer. And basic audio is poor audio. The Raspberry Pi and those inexpensive generic USB cards and the built-in ones are almost always using the same poor quality sound chips. Even those name brand ones nearly always use generic chips as well. While they may output sound, they don't output quality sound. You're going to have lower output levels. Generic poor quality off the deck DACs, just not going to sound as good as those custom ones. You're also going to have a poor signal to noise ratio, a loss of fidelity, loss of range, and a fullness and clarity. And in some cases can be worse than the onboard motherboard audio. And it is very easy and inexpensive to upgrade your sound card. So I recommend using the Creative Sound Blaster. Creative Labs, if you don't know about them, they've been making high-end PC audio since the 80s and investing heavily in audio research, and it is the #1 brand for superior computer sound cards. The Sound Blaster Play 3 USB is the least expensive and easiest way to vastly improve your audio, whether you're using a PC, Mac, or Raspberry Pi. They typically cost about 19 bucks, and I've seen them like 14 bucks on sale. There are better sound blasters out there. Sometimes some of them are a couple $100. And if you wanted to go further, you could, but for Christmas light audio, this is a perfect fit. And if you have a PC or Mac, this is going to give you additional functionality. It has an equalizer. Again, I recommend you using it sparingly or not at all, but you do have it there. It also has a compressor. This is what they call smart volume, and it will automatically adjust the loudness for the sudden volume changes. And like I said, I don't necessarily recommend it, but it is a one quick fix for all your audio volume. So what does it offer over just your generic stuff? You get high-end custom proprietary DACs. You get superior sound quality output and high signal to noise ratios. Also, because it's separate, it's isolated from the other components, which helps reduce interference. And because it's USB, you can extend the sound card to a different location from those other interfering devices. And in some cases, USB audio may be your only choice. Like if you're using a laptop or a Pi Hat or a Pi Zero, when you plug those in, it's going to disable the onboard audio to those Pis. And so you have to use USB audio. And here's some real world users here. I switched the USB Sound Blaster this last year, and the difference was night and day. The difference was immediately noticeable to myself and lots of my viewers. I've been running FPP for 4 years now and can't believe I waited that long. That's from Lee Lindquist. And why didn't I do this years earlier? From David Peace from the Peace Family Light Show. And then the entire Lights Alive, that 1 mile drive-through display, ran on a 1/2 watt SignStack external J-pole antenna with the Sound Blaster Play 3, and the audio reached all the cars perfectly synced with superb sound quality. And that's Matt Johnson from Living Light Shows and See Lights Alive. So let's look and kind of see if you're using like an onboard audio or a Pi or something like that, kind of what the difference is here. You can see, let me get my mouse here. You can have reduced output levels. So this is at 100%, and you can see it's not using the full amount. You can also get clipping. So at 100%, it clips, but you reduce it down, it's not clipping, but you have reduced volume. You can also have, just noise in the sound card itself. So here's a generic sound card playing back a silent audio file. It should be silent. You're getting noise. You could also have multiple problems together. So you can get clipping and drastically reduced audio. So here is the Raspberry Pi, and not only do we have low levels, it's also distorting. Now here's the Sound Blaster Play 3 on the right. I'm playing back a silent audio file. I get silence. That's the way it should be. You also get very strong levels. So here it is running from a PC at 97%, no EQ, no audio enhancements, and I'm getting maximized audio levels with no clipping whatsoever. All right, let's do some tests here. Audio tests need to be heard to be believed, but let's go ahead and see it. There's the test audio if you want to check it out later. Visual comparisons of the original audio versus the sound card output. And if you're using a generic sound card to listen or using poor speakers, the comparison examples may not be too different. Like I said, audio is one of those things you need to hear. And if you're listening on poor sound card or poor headphones, you're really not going to hear the difference. So here's the Raspberry Pi audio. And you can see that even at 100%, it sounds distant and muffled. There's a loss of treble and a clarity, and it lacks presence. So there's the original MP3 audio file at the top, and there's the output that I get from it. Way less. Here's one of your generic USB sound cards. I can't test all of them, but they're all going to kind of perform similar. And again, I get a huge reduction in the output levels, even at 100%. There's a loss of fidelity, loss of sound detail, and it lacks presence. And it actually sounded worse than the Raspberry Pi. Now here's a Sound Blaster. There is no reduction in the output levels, and it sounds identical to the original, full and vibrant. So this is going to be the clear winner in audio quality and strength. And for $19, it's a no-brainer light show upgrade. All right, now how do you install this thing? If you're using a PC or Mac, plug it in, install the software from Creative's website. The software, go ahead and turn the SBX Pro Studio off. If you want to use a smart volume, that's optional. Go ahead and set the EQ to flat. And then for the gain, make sure it's at normal gain, and then put your volume to 100%. And then go ahead and plug the audio output into the Sound Blaster. Now, if you're using a Raspberry Pi with FPP, make sure you're always using the latest version. Some of the older versions can cause issues, or there's they're bugging something that's happened before. Upgrade to the latest version, you're probably going to be fine. Go ahead and turn off the Pi, plug it in, turn on the Pi, and then go ahead and select the Sound Blaster as the output in the FPP interface. Restart FPPD, and then by default, the volume is going to be at 70, and that's a safe volume that you can use. I recommend if you want to go up a little higher, you can set it to 79% max, but don't go higher than that or you're going to clip. And then go ahead and plug the audio output into the Sound Blaster. All right, let's talk FM transmitters. What you're going to want to do first is find an available FM frequency. Here's a good website that you can go to and just type in your location. It'll tell you recommended recommended FM channels that you can use. But what's listed may not always be the best, so make sure you test for yourself. In my case, 89.1 was the best frequency. And you can see for this website, it recommended it as the third best, but actually turned out to be the best. Only transmit as far as you need with FM transmitters. You don't want to transmit for miles if people can't see your display. You don't want to interfere with other stations, or you can raise the eye of the FCC. And even a half-watt transmitter in low power can transmit for blocks or even miles. So how does it sound to the guest in their car? Couple notes about FM. Due to the nature of FM, there will be static and there will be a reduction of sound quality. And if you're in a highly congested area, like I'm in Orange County, so every single station is used. For the most part, highly congested FM areas may sound worse. And different FM receivers will sound better or worse. So make sure when you're testing, don't just always test with one FM receiver. Test with a couple different ones. Use like a portable one. Use a car. Use a different car, because some will sound better or worse than others. Quick disclaimer on this: all tests performed under the same circumstances for fairness of results, and your results may vary due to numerous factors such as local FM interference, terrain, objects, things like that. And then transmission distance will always improve with a better antenna and the higher they are mounted. All right, so how do we test this? I used it with the Pi with FPP and the Sound Blaster set to 79%. And I tested with the three most common FM transmitters that I see used in our hobby. The half-watt sign stack, and I set it to low power, 100 milliwatts. These $5, really $5 to $10, just depends. I'm just going to call it $5 FM transmitter, and that's at 100 milliwatts. You can find them on eBay, and it doesn't come with an antenna. I just put a foot wire antenna on it for initial testing. There's also the EDM transmitters that you see, and this was set to high power, 100 milliwatts. So all three using the same power output. And I optimized all the inputs to ensure no clipping, all using the stock antennas, broadcasting from the same location, and received on your average car stereo, basic antenna, no EQ enhancements or anything, and I did a line out. And if you want to listen to these examples, I have them available for download. So let's listen to the sign stack. So in low power mode with the stock antenna, the results were it had a strong signal. There was a slight hum at quieter parts, a reduction in the treble, but overall it sounded very good. The $5 FM transmitter, it had average signal strength. There was a slight buzzing hiss throughout. It had decent fidelity, though slightly muffled. It did have a little bit of a bright sound, but overall, okay. Then there was the EDM transmitter, and it did have a strong signal. There was a quiet buzz throughout. It sounded a bit muffled. Overall, it sounded average, and this is most likely due to the poor included antenna. So for blind listening tests, out of the box and for the price, the SignStack half watt sounds the best overall. The $5 FM transmitter and the EDM both had buzzing throughout, while the SignStack had at least and can be mainly only heard during the quieter parts. The $5 FM transmitter had more buzz than the EDM, but it also had more treble than the EDM. The EDM had slightly less buzz than the $5 FM transmitter, but it also sounded more muffled. And a better antenna essentially eliminates the buzz and hum for all of them. And more on this in a bit when I talk about antennas. So let's look at the pros and cons for each one. On the SignStack, great sound and range, and comes with all you need, including the audio cable. The included antenna works well. So if you just need a one-stop shop for FM transmitter, there you go. For the price, it's the best FM transmitter. Now, I've noticed with these, they've recently increased in price. Typically, you could find them for around $60, but now I see them for around 130. I was able to get a second one for like $30 one time on an Amazon sale, so watch for deals. The con, there's no RDS data. So if you're not using RDS, don't even worry about it. The analog dial to set the input, it's not digital, so you could bump it and just screw up your settings there. And on very rare occasions, I've had it not turn on. So make sure you always have a backup no matter what you get. And, I did unplug it, plug it back in, and it was fine. I've only had that happen once, but just so it's out there, so you know. The $5 transmitter, the Pro, good sound and good range. and it's great to have as a spare FM transmitter. It's great for compact or battery powered displays, and you can digitally set the input. I recommend setting it to 26. That's a good level. The con is you do need to solder your own antenna, and you must provide your own audio cable, USB power, and power cable, and optional housing. You don't have to have housing, but that's optional. And while it is a good FM transmitter, the USB sound card is poor, so only use the line in. Do not use it as a USB audio device. Now for the EDM, the pros, it did have good sound, and you can get models with RDS. I also like how it has recessed gain control, so it's difficult to accidentally bump. The cons on these is they are pricey. They're around 300 bucks. There is minor assembly required. And then for adjusting the audio levels, the left and the right volume controls are separate, so it's very difficult to properly tune the input gain. And the included antenna is very poor. Very expensive when FM transmitters at a fraction of the price sound and perform better. If you have one of these, you can actually adjust the power output level. I think by default it's in 10 milliwatts, but if you opened it up, there's a little slider switch. You can set it to 100 milliwatts if you'd like. So it's something to keep in mind. So for the stock antennas, the SignStack antenna is decent and it works very well out of the box. So if you just need something, that'll get you going. The included EDM antenna is junk, and the $5 FM transmitter has no antenna whatsoever. So on the ranges, they all sounded good when listening in the main viewing area. All had some minor static when driving around. And both the EDM antenna and the $5 transmitter wire antenna had the exact same range. And all stock antennas except the SignStack are very poor. Now, let's look at a different antenna, a dipole antenna. You're not limited by only the stock antennas. There's many different antennas out there, but a dipole antenna essentially eliminates the buzz and hum from most stock antennas. It's also going to increase your range and reduce static drops. One thing to keep in mind with the better antenna is it's not going to improve the audio fidelity. Make sure you use the Sound Blaster for this. You can also mount this antenna in many different locations: inside, outside, on the roof, chimney. This picture on the right, this is the antenna, and it's inside the back of my garage. And for my needs, that's totally fine. I don't need to mount it on the roof. It sounds great from there. And the DIY Christmas form has a very easy build, fantastic build. And for best results, when you make it, you must cut it to the frequency that you choose to broadcast on. So make sure you choose your frequency first and mount it vertically in the correct orientation. And of course, the higher you mount it, the better. Now, there are many other types of antennas out there, such as a J-pole, but this dipole antenna was easy to build with outstanding results. And then as far as adapters and extension cables, feel free to use antenna adapters so you can adapt it, to whatever FM transmitter you're getting, or RG6 extension cables. As long as it is a solid fit, it's not going to affect the antenna transmission. And then there's some different adapter types, like if you're going to build this yourself, there are some adapter types for the EDM and the SignStack that I recommend. And so let's look at this range. Here is the stock antenna of the EDM and the $5 FM transmitter. That little check mark, that's where I'm at. And you can see within that green circle, that's where it sounded good. Within the yellow, it got some static. And then within the red, there was absolute static. With the SignStack, again, all this is using the same power. I had a much better range and clarity. So on my street, it sounded really full there. And that's, the built-in antenna in low power. Now, connecting the dipole antenna, all three of the FM transmitters vastly improved, and they all had the same transmission range. So you can see right there, I had really good in that green center. Just it sounded really good, and then further out you get some static, and then of course in the red you get nothing but static. So yeah, just by changing the antenna, big difference there. You're going to reduce a lot of your static for sure. Now, quick note on FM transmitters that are high powered. Typically, these are like the 5-watt and higher ones. I have had so many people experience problems with these. I don't recommend using these high powered ones. All these have happened: distorted audio, bleeding into neighboring stations, knocking out USB sound cards, interfering with other electronic devices such as garage door openers. even interfering with Christmas lights and controllers, acting erratically, flickering, or not even turning on. And in many cases with these high powered ones, you may be violating transmission limits. So make sure you check with your country on that. And make sure you avoid any FM transmitters that are higher than half a watt. For antenna mounting location, the closer to the audience, it's if possible, that's better with the least amount of obstructions. You want to make sure your antenna is head level or higher and not on the ground or in the basement. I've had people, they mounted their antenna in their basement and they were wondering why their audio was bad. Well, that's kind of part of the problem. Make sure you can have the antenna pointing up or down. Doesn't necessarily matter, but if you're using a dipole antenna, it must be vertical with the top element up. That's the center core wire. All right, now let's talk about optimizing audio levels. If you just plug it in, your levels are not going to be optimized. And non-optimized audio levels can result in distortion and noise, a loss of audio levels, even future problems down the line. Um, so using a test tone, this is the easiest way to optimize your audio levels. So for this test tone, there's nothing magic about it, but it's a 100 hertz test tone at 0 dB. And this is the maximum audio without clipping, without distortion. So it's really a good test. And if you hear any distortion at any other point in the test, then you know that's where the audio is clipping. If you're using Audacity, you can generate a 30-second sample just of 100 hertz at 0 dB, or you can just download it. I made one. You can just click on that link and go ahead and download it and use this for testing yourself as well. So the first thing we need to do in optimizing our audio levels is prep our sound cards. So if you're using FPP, make sure you select the Sound Blaster as the output, restart FPP-D, set the volume to 70%. That's the default. If it's at 70, you're fine there. 79% max if you're feeling good. And then on the PC or Mac, turn the SBX Pro Studio to off and the Smart Volume to off and the EQ to flat. You can turn on the Smart Volume afterwards if you want to use that for make sure all your songs are at a level, but make sure you have this off when you're optimizing your levels. And on the PC, you want to have it normal gain, volume 100%. If you want to be safe, go ahead and set it to 95%. If you don't have a Sound Blaster and you're watching this after the fact or you weren't able to get one or whatever, and you just have to use your generic audio for the Pi, set it to 100%. And if you're using like a generic onboard or your computer, whatever, set it to 100%. You can lower it if necessary. And if at any point in your testing you still get clipping, go ahead and lower the output levels by about 5 and then retest from there. The next thing we want to do is prep our receiver, our FM receiver. So if you're using like the EDM or the Science Tech or anything else like that, go ahead and turn your input gain to 0, put it all the way to 0. If you're using a $5 FM transmitter, set the input gain to 26. I found that's a really good level. Next thing you want to do is go ahead and prep your car radio or your loudspeakers. So where you're going to be listening to it finally. Turn your car or your little radio that you have, turn it low, put it like around 10 to 25%. And make sure you have any EQ or bass, treble enhancements, turn them off if possible. All right, now here's what we optimize. So what we're going to do is you're going to want to play back this 100 hertz tone at 0 dB and have it looped so you can kind of play with the levels. You don't want to go back and always have to play it again. Once you're playing the tone, you want to slowly turn the input gain on the FM transmitter. So go ahead and, or if you're using external loudspeakers, slowly turn that up. So you're going to be slowly turning it up the gain on the FM transmitter. Once you hear clipping, slowly turn it down until you no longer hear clipping. So here's an example right here as seen in Audacity. And when you're tuning your levels, you're going to hear it distort. Once you hear it distort, you want to back down until you hear no distortion. And in this example with the video, you can actually see when it distorts. So hopefully you can hear it. You'll hear it distort when it gets too loud. And you can see the distortion. You want it as loud as possible without distortion. There you go. And then once you have that, your input level is now optimized. Notice you have a strong, clean audio signal. And after this, if you hear any distortion, uh, try turning on the sound card and try it again. So if you get distortion, no matter what, you go back to the sound card, go back to the FPP, turn it down just a little bit more, and go ahead and re-optimize. Now you can turn up your final output. So in your car, go ahead and turn it up, crank it up. And audio should sound strong without any clipping. And if you hear any clipping heard at higher levels are now due to this are now not due to the sound card or the FM transmitter. So if someone's cranking it in their car, they're the one that's clipping, not you. Okay, audio cables. The stock audio cables can often be poor, and quality audio cables are no substitution for a quality sound card. If you go out there and buy a high-end audio cable, it's not going to hold a candle to having a quality sound card or optimized levels. A good audio cable will never fix incorrectly set gain or poor sound card or poor audio files. Monster cables, they're good. They just cost more, and other cables are just as good. So a couple other good affordable brands are Monoprice, Cable Matters, Amazon Basics. Make sure you buy ones that are shielded with gold connectors if you can. It should say shielded to prevent EMI or RFI interference. And here's some examples. There's a Monoprice cable on the left. There's an Amazon Basics. You can go ahead and look those up. Very good audio cables. All right, Bluetooth. This always comes up. Bluetooth speakers, just don't. Sorry, guys, just don't. There's too much latency that you can never overcome. And all Bluetooth audio is recompressed. It's not going to sound that good. Now, if you do need to play back on like an external speaker, some Bluetooth speakers have an auxiliary input or an FM tuner. If that's the case, go ahead and connect to the aux input or use the FM tuner, and you're not going to have any latency. Don't use the Bluetooth. Also, when you're sequencing, don't use Bluetooth headphones. Never sequence with Bluetooth headphones. Always hardwire. All Bluetooth has latency. Even if it says low latency, they all have latency. Your sequences will be out of sync if you sequence Bluetooth headphones. Now, some cars, some newer cars I've noticed, some audio systems have like audio processing delays. So they're listening to their display and it's just like out of sequence and they're the only car that does that. There's really nothing you can do on your end to compensate for this, nor should you try. But what you can do is you can try having them turn off any audio enhancements in their car, and that can often just get rid of the delay. Now, external mixers, I've seen people use these. In general, they're unnecessary. Most of the time, they're using an external mixer in an attempt to correct a poor audio source, and it's generally a bad idea. Again, garbage in, garbage out. If you try to use this to tweak the audio settings to make a pie sound better, it's not really going to help. You want to always start with a quality sound output first. So go ahead and upgrade your sound card. The Sound Blaster Play 3 is way less expensive than an external mixer and will have better results. Some small mixers will have USB audio, and while it's likely superior to an onboard Pi, it's likely inferior to a Sound Blaster. And if you're using a PC or Mac, that Sound Blaster control panel has all the audio controls included in the software, so like EQ and things like that. Okay, ferrite cores. You've probably seen these things on cables. These help reject EMI and RFI interference. What you want to do is wrap the cable around at least once when possible, and you want to place these on each AC and audio line, and place on the cables closest to the noise source. And while they may not perform miracles, they do help. Every little bit helps. So I have multiple of these in my system. Okay, audio troubleshooting. While I can't anticipate every possible audio problem, here are the most common ones. So you want to make sure you have your testing method down. Always start testing at the source and move down the line. Is the issue present in the audio file? There's many cases where they think they have a bad FM transmitter, or bad something like that, but the problem is actually in the original audio file. Is the issue present at the sound output? Go ahead and plug the headphones directly into your sound output and see if you hear the problem there. Is the issue present at the FM transmitter? Test with different FM receivers. Though a car audio receiver in the viewing area is the best. So if you're always listening to like a little Walkman, try something else. It may sound totally different. Okay, clipping and distortion. Check your output levels because clipping can occur at many different places. You could have clipping in the audio file, clipping at the sound card level, at the FM transmitter, or even in the final output. You could have clipping there if it's turned up too loud. So again, starting with the source, including the audio file, move down the line. When in doubt, turn the outputs down a little and go ahead and like reduce in increments of 5. Are you plugging into aux and not the mic? Make sure you don't plug your audio input into the mic. Always use the auxiliary or line in. Go ahead and start over and re-optimize your audio levels. When in doubt, just start over again. Static. Again, starting with the source, including the audio file, check for static. Do you have a poor antenna? Try a different antenna. Check the cable for damage. Check the connectors. Check the antenna ground. I've had people where their ground wasn't connected to the antenna. It just sounded really bad. They plugged in the ground. It worked just fine. Mount the antenna higher. That always helps. Try a different antenna. Try a higher output level on the FM transmitter if you can do that. But again, don't want to go over half a watt for sure. You could have electrical interference. Try turning off other nearby electrical devices and cables. Like if you have an AC unit and your setup is right there, that could be causing interference. You could also use a USB extension cord to move the sound card and the FM transmitter away from the other electronics. That can help too. You could also try a different audio receiver. Again, not all radios are the same. So if it sounds bad on one, it may sound great on another, and you just had a bad radio receiver. Warbling. This is kind of like, it's like ocean wave sounding in the audio files. And I've seen this most commonly when you're using lower bitrate audio files or YouTube rips or files that have been recompressed multiple times. I was helping one person and they resaved their audio file like 35 times and they wonder why it sounded bad because they kept recompressing it. This is going to severely degrade the audio. Once you do this, there is no way to recover from low bit rate or recompressed audio. The damage is already done, and recompressing the audio will only degrade it further. You're going to want to seek out original higher quality audio file. Go ahead and spend that dollar. Buy the MP3 from Amazon. There also could be possible interference. Go ahead and try a different FM channel. You could also have a ground loop. This is a constant, often low hum you hear in the audio, kind of like a bassy hum. And this is caused by being connected to two different paths to ground. I have some links right there. You can learn more about ground loops. They're going to know a lot more about that than I will. But if you have this is a good resource to check. Try moving things around so they plug into a common AC outlet. You could also use an electrical tester to make sure your outlet shows correct. If it doesn't show correct, you may have a ground problem in your house. You could also try using a ground loop isolator. But quick note, if you use this, it may reduce your audio quality. So only use that if you really have to. Interference. You could try a different FM frequency. You could try a different antenna location or a different antenna. Try a different FM receiver, like I mentioned before. You could also try separating the transmitter and the audio device from the other electronics. So again, if you're using the Sound Blaster with the USB, use that extension cable to separate the sound card. Also, metal, brick, and glass can also interfere with FM transmission. And like I mentioned before, turn off other devices one at a time to find the source of the interference. So like if you have a generator or something like that, I mean, that could be causing interference. So turn those devices off until you see, oh, there's my interference was right there. You could also use ferrite cores because these will help to reject the interference. Like I said, they won't cause miracles to happen, but they do help reject interference. And you also could have a ground loop. I've also seen that some people using like a USB hub / NIC cards in their device, I've seen those cause audio interference. They switched to a different type and the interference went away. So that's another thing to check. Now, if you're using a PC or Mac, there's some extra special tricks that you can do in the Sound Blaster control panel. And this is available in modern Sound Blasters, including the Play 3. It has this smart volume, which is the dynamic audio compressor that I mentioned. And this will raise and lower the audio to a more even level on the fly. There is no need to normalize any audio file. It will affect the dynamic range. Again, personal preference. I personally don't like doing it. Some people think it sounds better. It's really up to you. Yeah, you may like it. And it can also help hide any noise inherent in FM transmission. So all you have to do is go to smart volume, turn that on, put it to normal, and you can see especially on the right-hand side, here's an example. There's the original audio file. It's really, really low, but just one click and it makes that sound good, and it's going to match and sound very similar in volume to all my other songs that I'm using. So, quick note on hardware availability. I've noticed that these half-watt sign sets, they've been harder to come by recently on Amazon, and prices have increased, and sometimes they're even out of stock. Um, you can find the 7-watt to 15-watt transmitters. I think they operate 1-watt low power, but even that's too high. They're easier to find, but this is still way too powerful and not recommended. Go ahead and watch Amazon for any lightning deals. Like I mentioned, I got my second backup science deck for $30 last year on sale. There's also some other alternative sources. You can get them direct from Science Tech. You can find them on eBay. There's also some knockoff brands, even though I haven't tested them, like Failsafe, Rangestar, or Reticus, whatever you say that. I have no idea. There's also the whole house transmitter. Now, I haven't personally used it, but other people have used it and they've had good luck. You can change antennas. It operates off of USB, 12-volt, or even AA batteries. So that's another option. I've seen the Sound Blaster Play 3 sometimes go out of stock as well. You can buy them direct from the Creative Store. There's also a slightly upgraded version. It's a Sound Blaster X G1 USB. It's about $10 more. It has updated software more specific to gamers, but for stereo, it's going to work identical to the Sound Blaster Play 3. So to recap, audio output. Use quality audio files from reputable sources like Amazon. Avoid YouTube rips. Avoid recompressing when possible and use a higher bit rate to resave when you need to. Normalize audio files if needed. Recommended to use MP3 gain because it'll normalize it without affecting the audio quality or recompressing it. You can optionally use the smart volume in the Sound Blaster software. Use a quality sound card like the Sound Blaster Play 3 and avoid generic and built-in audio. Avoid any audio enhancements. Set the EQ to flat and only EQ if you have control over the final output source. So if you're using loudspeakers, go ahead and EQ until it sounds perfect to you. On the FM transmitter, always plug into the aux or line in and turn down or turn off your mic input. You want to mount the antenna at head level or higher and use a better antenna when possible. You can use ferrite cores on AC and quality shielded audio cables. That's going to help reject noise. Also choose a free FM frequency and only transmit as far as you need to. Do not use FM transmitters that are more powerful than like half a watt. And then test for sound issues by starting at the source and move down the line. And then for the optimizing the audio levels, here's a quick high level how you do this. You're going to want to use a test tone, for example, 100 hertz at 0 dB. There's a link where you can download it or generate one yourself in Audacity. You want to turn down the stereo and the FM transmitter. You want to put that input to low. And then you're going to turn the primary output levels up until it distorts. That's when it clips, and then go ahead and back off. And then turn the aux input on the FM transmitter, up until it distorts and then back off. So there you go. And then you're going to have it optimized. You can go back and see how to do that in the presentation. And here's some recommended products. So there's the Science Tech half watt FM transmitter. There's the $5 FM transmitter that you can find on eBay. There's also the Sound Blaster Play 3. And if you can't find that one, the Sound Blaster X G1. If you're using a computer, you can buy a built-in one. Just plug it into your PCIe slot. There's the link on how to make a dipole FM antenna. There's the shielded audio cables, the ferrite cores. If you're sequencing or listening on bad headphones, upgrade your headphones. There's the Cost Porta Pro, fantastic headphones for not that much money. If you want to get really fancy, you can get the Audio Technica headphones. Those are going to have nice, clean, natural sound. It's not really going to distort or add its own color to the sound like Beats Audio or some of that other stuff. So very, very good, critically acclaimed headphones. There's also a ground loop isolator you can get, and there's the if you're going to be stripping your RG6 cables, go ahead and get one of those coax cable strippers. It's a lot easier than using a knife. And there's the twist on RGX or coax, though you can use compression. That's usually the best. And then the software, Audacity. There's a presentation later on today about Audacity, fantastic piece of software. There's the MP3 gain for PC or Mac, so you can normalize your levels. And if you're using the Sound Blaster, there's the link to the Sound Blaster control panel. And special thanks to Rob Morrill for letting me use his EDM in this testing. And look, I'm right on time. Any questions?
Thank you, Jason. We have a bunch of questions.
Oh my. I know I kind of blazed through that a little quickly because I had to fit it in.
Yeah, there's questions in the chat.
Let's see. Should I look them over or should you? Let me find my.
That is weird.
There we go. All right. Let's see if I can look through these here. Oh my gosh, so many questions. Let's see here. Did you see? If you see any, go ahead and shout them out. Try to scroll back here. All right, here's where it started. Let's see here. How would transmitters with a direct USB compare? I think you're talking about like the $5 FM transmitter that does have a built-in USB sound card. It's terrible. Don't use it. Don't use it at all. So I don't know if there's any other FM transmitters that have a USB sound card, but they're probably going to be using generic sound chips as well. So I don't recommend using it. Use the line input. Let's see. Love the creative brand. Love the creative brand. Very good. Let's see here. What about using an EDM through a Pi? If you have an EDM, fine, they're using it. I mean, it's not a bad FM transmitter. If you already have one, go ahead and use it. Just make sure you optimize your levels. If you're using a Pi, the Pi is going to be your biggest problem. So make sure that you use, I highly recommend using that Sound Blaster Play 3. So use that with the Pi, connect to the EDM, optimize your levels, you should be good. Let's see. I use Jason's setup with an EDM and a Sound Blaster, and it works great. You can fix the buzzing on the EDM by using a good filtered power supply or extra powering filtering cable. Yeah, that can also help. I mean, some people have bad power. I luckily have really good power where I'm at. I'm actually on the same utility as Disneyland, so where I'm at. So that's really nice. Very, very clean power here. Let's see here. People are talking about VAST. I know a lot of people have used those, but they're really hard to find. So I haven't been mentioning this. I'm only mentioning and recommending products that people can easily find. Let's see here. Use USB power on audio RDS. Yes, I am researching some other FM transmitters that have RDS built into it, but I don't think it's ready for prime time just yet. So hopefully in the future. Let's see here. Will other USB externals work the same as the Play 3? Example, the Sound Blaster XG1. Actually, yes, that's one I recommended. That's because it's only like $10 more. Go ahead and use it. Like I said, avoid those generic ones. There's also like other ones that have like a name brand like Ugreen or whatever. You open them up, they all use the same bad chips. Don't use those. But yeah, if you already have a Sound Blaster, there's also other ones. Like I've tested with other ones and they're usually going to be fine. But the Sound Blaster Play 3 or the Sound Blaster XG1 USB, they're going to be just fine. Let's see here. Not on stock. Amazon. I don't know what they're talking about. Sound Blaster Play 3 USB no longer available on Amazon. Yes, they did sell out. I mean, because I checked it like last week because I wanted to make sure my prices were right. And they were in stock last week. They weren't in stock this week. That's why I recommended the other one as an alternative. But you can buy them directly from the Creative Store. They're like 19 bucks directly from Creative. So you can buy them there as well. Yes, I have seen FM transmitters and the sound cards and everything when they're recommended whenever a presentation like this is done and they sell out on Amazon. It happens. So there's other alternative places you can buy them. And let's see, most newer cars have digital audio processing on radios, which present a latency due to processing. As Jason said, there is no current solution. Yeah, no current solution. There's nothing you can do on your end. You just have to tell them. If using an FM transmitter, where do you connect the ground of the coax? Good question. I actually have a picture of it. Let me find it. Give me one sec here. I did put it in the presentation. There it is. And let's play it. Come on, PowerPoint. And it's not going. Yep. 1 second here. All right. Let's find it again. On here. There we go. Right there in the bottom. So on the back of the $5 FM transmitter, there is the ground. So that's where you're going to want to solder the ground. So hopefully that will answer your question. Do you put the ferrite core on the audio cable? You can put them everywhere. It's not going to hurt anything. The more, the better. Go for it. Doesn't matter. I have them on my AC lines as well as the audio cables. I put it as close. Let's see here. So on cable, let's see here. How is the quality of the audio chip on the LOR? I do not know, so I cannot talk about that. So I do not know. As far as legality on stuff, because people are in different areas and different countries, I'm not going to give any legal advice. The best thing I can recommend is do not transmit any farther than what you need to. If you're transmitting for miles, then yes, the FCC may come by your way. So you'll only transmit as far as you need to. For me, I have my dipole antenna inside my garage, and I know it reduces my range, but that's okay. I don't need to transmit far on my range. I just need it to sound good in the area where people are viewing it. Let's see here. So you're saying that FM is way better than Bluetooth. Bluetooth can give much better sound and personal experience. Here's the problem. Bluetooth introduces latency. Latency is the killer. And the other nice thing about FM is it's one to many. You could have hundreds of people listening to FM. You can't do that with Bluetooth. Maybe in the future, Bluetooth will become an option so people can use on their phones or things like that. I know there's been a lot of talks about it, but we're not even close to there. So make sure you use FM. Let's see here. Yeah, it's hard to find a quality transmitter that is less than half a watt. In this one, I updated it, so there are alternatives. Hopefully you can find them. What are your thoughts on RDS radio text? Is it worth broadcasting? My thoughts are I'd rather have them watch my display. I do want to put RDS into my display eventually because I think it'd be cool. They can see what song's playing. But personally, I'd rather it sound good first and have them watch my display, not just their display on their car. But eventually, I want to find an RDS radio that is affordable and easy to set up. So yes, that's something I am researching. Eventually. Thank you. I switched to the Sound Blaster last year and it made a huge difference. Yeah, I cannot tell you how many people who have reached out to me and say optimizing the levels and switching to the Sound Blaster made a huge difference in their display. How can we get a presentation to the links? I will be posting this. I can even post the links like on the holiday lighting think tank. I can post links in there. I know I went through them fast. Your recommendation is to not use more than half-watt transmitter, and that's so you don't transmit too far. Yes, primarily that is the case. You do not want to get involved in any legal things. I mean, higher watt, it's just power, just pushing power to things, and that can help reduce the static and stuff. But I mean, even just using a very, very low power, like even the EDMs, you could have an EDM at 10 milliwatts and connected to a good antenna mounted on your roof. It's going to sound fantastic. So you only want to transmit as far as you need. So like I said, in my case, I'm running in low power and I have my antenna behind my stucco wall. It's not going to reduce my audio quality in the viewing area, but it does reduce the distance that I can transmit. And for me, that's fine. Totally fine. Go ahead and do your testing.
I don't know why I'm getting this feedback. I'm going to stop.